Clare FM's Beyond Belief with Father Brendan Quinlivan.
Díar a phobal J agus bhfuil géad fáilte isteach chuig clár na híthe nach lá éile Brigid, tá sé bhí géisteach le Clare FM agus seo hé Beyond Belief lomsa Brendan Quinlivan idir seo agus a deich clog agus tá súla am go mé se bhín an fannacht in éanacht lom go dtí sin. A very good evening to you. On this, the feast of St. Brigid, our national patron, you're very welcome to this week's edition of Beyond Belief. And on the programme tonight, we'll have some reflection on St. Brigid and on the significance of her feast day with Father Tom Hogan, the parish priest of Birr, formerly of Ennis, whom you all know very well. I'll also be joined on the programme a little later on by Father Michael McCullagh. Father Michael McCullagh is a Vincentian priest who was the leader and guider of the recent Killaloe Clergy retreat in the International Marian and Eucharistic Shrine of Knock. And he will talk to us a little bit about how the spirituality of priesthood and maintaining that spirit of prayer and service. So to start us off on the programme tonight, Os Rodai go Wilmi je Killaloe Clergy. This is a song that if you have any small people in the house, you'll be familiar with. It's We Sing a Song to Brigid. Brigid brings the spring. An appropriate piece of music for today, Lá Éile Brigid. We'll sing a song to Brigid. Brigid brings the spring. And if you have any small people in your house preparing their catechetics and their RE program, they might be singing that around the house. We have a wonderful tradition of St. Brigid, and I'm delighted to be joined on the program this evening by Father Tom Hogan, well known to all of you, to talk a little bit and reflect a little bit on St. Brigid and the spiritual meaning of the story of St. Brigid. She was kind of neglected for a while, but she has her own bank holiday now, Tom, and she's kind of come into her own again. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. Before we go there, just when that piece was coming into my consciousness, I was brought back to Fado time to Ennis National School, to Mary Corbett and to Marion Pilkington. And I was so enjoy when you go into class, we'll sing a song to Brigid. It just raises up. But she certainly has come into her own, and she's been coming for a good while.
Now, when you were growing up, was there a strong tradition of Brigid and Loyal Brigid around your day, and some of the nósanna that went with it? Do you have memories of that from your childhood?
Absolutely zilch. I had to come to Clare, come to the Burden, come to be imbued with the culture of the banner and individual peoples. But one of the people that I can attribute a huge amount of weakness to is Dennis Crosby in the Scanner, and the way in which when he came more or less the same time as I came to Innis, and he opened a whole vista in terms of Brigid and Celtic spirituality and the Crish Breda and the Brat Breda and all that goes with all that part of our lives that was there, but it has been lost or forgotten.
And I think that's very fair to say about Nave Brigid getting something of a resurgence in recent years, largely because so many of our saints are male and masculine, and particularly here in Ireland, they're the monks and all of those kind of things. But the story of the life of St. Brigid touches into something of that divine feminine and opens us up a little bit to other dimensions of ourselves.
Absolutely. And interesting you say that, because sometimes it's a chance or providence, but I had in my head about Brigid being in a particular time in history, and then I heard, just by the way, so someone was talking about the home that she was born into out in Morris's Mills in Ina, and that her father used to collect the rushes on the eve of Christmas and place them at the back door. And the idea was that Mary and Joseph, on their way to Bethlehem, would bless the rushes. And subsequently, I learned through Dennis Crosby that in the tradition, there's always this sense that Brigid was there at the same time as Mary and Joseph. It wasn't chronological history, it was that sense of the faith journey, one entering into the other.
And everything being fitcha-fucha.
That was the word in my head, fitcha-fucha, that the interconnectedness in life.
And of course, the fact that we often call Brigid Muireann Gael underlines and underscores that deep connection of faith tradition from the very earliest of times.
Get interested, you say Muireann Gael. A man that was very important in my priestly minister was your uncle, Pat Murnane. And in the parish in Florida, the parish of Our Lady of the Smile, the shrine he built around the Church of Nativity, he had a seat erected, and carved in the seat, Muireann Gael, Mary of the Irish. And he, as an immigrant who went and spent all his priestly life in South Florida, was an immigrant and a migrant. And he brought with him that memory of Mary and of that tradition.
So in many ways, agus muide Killaloe Nave Brigid, as we celebrate St. Brigid, one of the things that we're touching into, apart from the faith story, is in fact the story and the heart of the human voyage as well. And I think that's very important. And that comes up in many of the stories of the miracles of Brigid and many of the stories of her spirituality and her life.
And again, echoing that statement with present-day reality, there are two mighty women that live in Kildare town, and they live in a house there, Rita and Mary Minahan. They're Brigidins, and they epitomise what Brigid has stood for over the generations: hospitality, the holding of falcha, a great life within them. They're women now who have long past the pension age, but they're still full of the spirit, full of enthusiasm, and the fire that Brigid lit in Kildare is very much alive in those two women, two sisters, religious sisters and blood sisters, and Brigidins. And the place they founded, Chalk Breed, there just behind the National Stud, is part of their re-energising Brigid and our values.
Now, one of the things that I sometimes struggle with myself, to be honest with you, is there's kind of a huge effort, I think, sometimes in the public perception of Brigid and Brigid now, to tie her in and to link her with the pagan tradition, almost to neglect the Christian and the gospel values that maybe
as Catholic Christians we're meant to be celebrating in Brigid. But maybe I'm a bit judgmental in that. Maybe that tracing back into the pagan roots has something to offer us as well today.
Again, back to the word you used, the fitafuta, I think they complement each other. And if it goes into the pagan root, that's the reality of life. It was acknowledged and part of that whatever was somehow sacred or respected or somehow or other gave us sort of a pointer towards the transcendental. And in our Christian way, our Catholic way especially, that's one of the great gifts and blessings we have. I often think it's like putting a tint in your glasses. It just colours everything in life. It doesn't change the reality, but it changes the way in which you see the reality. And the Catholic way is everything is holy and everything is sacred, the bits and pieces. You know the lovely lines from Kavanagh, in the sow's rooting, where the hen scratches, we dipped our fingers in the pockets of God.
And the other theme, I suppose, that comes through, particularly this time of year, I think we all have the recollection of Antonin Rafter's poem, Anish Teachtain Erig Bigan Loi Dul Concheen, Agus Thresh na Fela Brige, or Doig Me Mohiol. That sense of, and echoed in the song that we played there a minute ago, Brigid brings the spring. That connection between Brigid, the woman, and the rebirth of nature in Imbolc in the springtime.
Yeah, one of the little WhatsApps that I got very early in January was a picture of the Plorini Schnachta coming up from the ground. A man you'd know and I know, Tom O'Gorman, sent it to me. And there was no words, but in my head, I said, Gomerlimid Bio, sign of new life, fresh beginning, new growth. And she comes right there at that time, where the light is increasing, the earth is getting that bit warmer, and nature is reawakening. And Brigid epitomises all of that, reawakening, re-emerging, fresh beginning.
When we began, we spoke about a new awareness, probably best exemplified in the new public holiday, which by pretty much overwhelming popular opinion, when they were proposing a new public holiday, fell for St. Brigid, Lála Brige. Do you greatly appreciate that renewal that's happening now in our understanding and giving her a central place, not just in our religious consciousness, but in our public consciousness as well?
Very much so. And I think it links in as well with a sense of not only Brigid's place in terms of the whole island, but also in terms of the local. So many places have associations with Brigid, and here in Clare, the Scanner is one of the great places, and the lovely statue in the grounds of the graveyard, and the cascading water coming out, and the way in which people come and leave parts of themselves there. And you mentioned about the feminine, rediscovering the feminine in us, and in our Catholic tradition in terms of the saints. So with Brigid, where I come from myself now, we have our own Leodán of Killaloe. Again, people wouldn't recognise and know who she is, but she's a woman, the mother of Kieran, or Ryan of Banagher, another female saint, or Gobnus of Ballyvourney, or Ita of Killaloe.
Don't forget the Newmarket woman, Conra.
Oh, Conra of Rhinanna.
Right.
Absolutely. But they have been forgotten. And it's lovely that we're beginning to reconnect and remember once more.
And that's very good for us, I think, as a believing people. You know, we've for generations we've sung the hymn "Faith of Our Fathers," and somehow forgotten that the most solid and the guardians and the protectors and the transmitters of faith, so often in all our households, really, more often than not, have been the faith of our mothers.
For sure. And that lovely image, back to Brigid, that the tradition tells us that when she founded her community in Kildare, that she had this big pit or fire that was lit, and that was continued to give light and give warmth right up to the time of the Reformation. And it was women who looked after that and who stoked it and who kept that fire alive. And de facto, in terms of our lives, our mums carried us and gave us life. In a lot of our cases, the mums were the great passers on of the sins of the sacred.
Well, Father Tom, thanks for taking the time to reflect with us on St. Brigid and maybe some of the spiritual lessons but not only the spiritual lessons, also the emotional lessons and the lessons in terms of growth as a people, not just of faith, but of genuine goodness, and all of those values that you talked about, like hospitality and fáilte, that they would still be part of who we are as a people.
Brigid, gentle woman, strong of spirit, be our guide, our joy, our hope, our strength, our light. Brigid brought God's love to all God's people and proclaimed it, making day from darkest night. Let us sing our praise to Brigid with hearts open as we gather here together now to pray. May her life for us remain an inspiration. May her faith be with us now and every day. Brigid, peaceful woman who showed courage, show us all the courage that we so often need. Brigid, love the poor, the sick and the lonely. Show us how to love in spirit and in deed. Let us sing our praise to Brigid with hearts open as we gather here together now to pray. May her life for us remain an inspiration. May her faith be with us now and every day. Brigid, who gave up her wealth to save us, teach us kindness, teach us to be more like you. Brigid, who was firm but always graceful, in your grace help us be firm, help us be true. Let us sing our praise to Brigid with hearts open as we gather here together now to pray. May her life for us remain an inspiration. May her faith be with us now and every day. Brigid, be the voice that guides all peoples. Bring us peace from all the conflict in our world. Lead us to the kingdom of our Savior.
So on this Sunday night, you're tuned to Clare FM and you're listening to Beyond Belief, and I have a very special guest on the programme with me this evening. Father Michael McCullagh is a native of Dunloe in County Donegal. He is over 50 years as a priest and has had a wide variety of ministry and vocation in those 50 years. He's the author of a book called With Due Respect, which reflects on some of his experiences in pastoral ministry and in the ministry that he's engaged in now. Father Michael, thanks very much for joining us on the programme this evening.
Thank you, Brendan.
Maybe, Father Michael, you might just let us know a little bit about those 50 years in the Congregation of the Missions, better known as the Vincentians, about some of the ways you've exercised your vocation and ministry in those years.
Yeah, I suppose one of the things that's with me very strongly at the moment is the miracle and mystery of the first call to priesthood. After 52 years now, almost, I'm thinking, how was I ever called? How did it happen? What's the mystery, the miracle of... I think of all the boys in my class, boys who went through seminary with. And then the second miracle and mystery that I'm still here today as a priest, 52 years. When I think of that immediately, I just think of the people of God, as we say. I think of the family, the village. It takes a village to raise a child. So that's the first thing. And I think of all the people who came to my mother saying, how's he doing? Tell him we're praying for him. Sure, that filly might never be ordained. You know what mothers talk? Then you're ordained and you're supported in wings of prayer. So that's it. As a young boy, I did an extra year in primary school, 7th class. There wasn't much opportunity for education, second level in West Donegal. You write a book about that. And I got this preparatory scholarship. And I went down to College Jania in Galway, and I was with a lot of lads from Clare and from Galway and all these different places. Did 4 years there, 2 for enter, 2 for leaving. Went on to teacher training. And again, a lot of young men from Clare, dear friends of mine, and looking back. I think I liked the men there. You know, I had a nice, boarding school can be difficult sometimes. I ended up a teacher myself, but we're away from home. So I loved the ambience of Pat's. I had a great time there. Loved it. It was a great time, a great camaraderie. And I think just, I began to think about priesthood, and a member of this priest came in to give a retreat. And I said, I wouldn't mind being a priest. I often thought about it, but the men here are very academic. Some of them have been in Oxford and Cambridge. And he says, here's one who's not. And I said, tell me your story. Well, he said, I was a barman in our pub in Camden Street, Sinnets, and I was nearly engaged to be married. So I said, I think I could do business with you because the National Ballroom and the Iron and the Teachers Club and the Crystal and the Olympic, they would have been part of my diet around my teacher training days. So from there, I got a little job in Drogheda, but I said, if I keep teaching here and up and down to the TV club at weekends, I don't think priesthood will happen. So I said, here goes. And so I became a priest, and I joined the men I knew. Not for any high ideals. I think you fall in love with the priests you know, and you fall in love with their God, and you fall in love with their calling.
And of course, having been in St. Pat's in Drumcondra, that was the Vincentian order.
That's right.
And of course, to Irish people, St. Vincent de Paul has huge resonance in terms of the St. Vincent de Paul Society, for example. So all of the religious orders have a kind of a charism or a mission. Right. Did you identify that, and did you see that very early on in your formation?
No, strangely, no. On the formation, yeah. But strangely, in Pat's, there was never a mention of priesthood, or we didn't even know there were Vincentians or what they were or anything. And I think they asked me, did I like working with the poor and stuff like that? I said, not particularly. And yet, when I look back, my father had me visiting the hospital when I was 12 years of age. And we're in the Legion of Mary, and I was bringing papers and helping old people nearby. So there was something in my DNA, thank God, that led me that way. So when I was ordained then, I was trained to work with the deaf. I was supposed to go to Cork. and be chaplain with the deaf. And things changed overnight. One of our priests went to a meeting and they were looking for a school, in a comprehensive school, the new community school. So I spent 6 years teaching there and I loved it, loved the young people. But after a few years, I remember coming along and I couldn't get into the car park with all the big cars. And I said, my work is done. And I said that to my provincial, but I said, I'm not asking to be changed. Within a few months, wasn't there an invitation from the Archbishop of Dublin to send men forward for interview to work with the travelling people. And I went for the interview, and there was Dermot O'Mahony, Bishop Dermot O'Mahony, a man called Owen Sweeney, and a man from Dublin Corporation. 3 of them interviewed me. And I was accepted. And I sat down and I wrote a letter of thanks to my mother and father because they had given me some of those values that helped me to get the interview. And I thanked them, my mother and my father, in different ways. And my mother wrote back immediately. There were no mobile phones then. She says, "Dear Michael, that was very nice to hear. We must be going to die soon." We didn't compliment our parents in those times.
Yeah, okay.
So I did 6 years of that.
Now, of course, when we think of the parish of the travelling people, particularly in Dublin, it's not your typical structure of a parish with halls and churches and buildings. It's all about the relationships, isn't it?
That's amazing. Yeah, I had no church. No church. It was an interesting concept. Greenfield. And they would say, "Where do you live? Where's your church?" Just myself at the beginning. And I remember there was a man in hospital in Blanchardstown. I heard the lovely story. He told the nurse one day, "My own priest is coming."
Okay.
And that was the beginning. Relationship was big. And I never went into a family without being introduced. Never. I went from the known to the unknown. Because if you went in, and there were a lot of people befriended them all over Dublin, and it was a huge influx of people all from the country at that time, and they entered on the margins of the city, isolated. Now that I've come, I'm in Knock Shrine now, and I noticed the travelling people here located in their own areas where they're known to their own people, but they were disorientated in Dublin, and it wasn't a good time. So just myself, but after a year I realised they're all naming me as their priest. I said, if I do this, I'll never be replaced. So I asked for another priest, which is the greatest move of my life.
Okay.
So there were 2 of us. And then we had 2 catechists come in, and then Dublin VEC paid for 4 visiting teachers. So we had a team built up in no time. And so when I was suddenly changed after 6 years, there was continuity, and it's still continuing 40 years later.
And in a very real sense, isn't that part of our understanding of the missionary dimension of the church?
Yeah.
That the role of the missionary is really to make himself or herself obsolete.
Yeah.
To put things in place that are sustainable and that will grow into the future. And that's certainly the case with the parish of the travelling people in Dublin.
Yeah, a young lady called Geraldine MacDonald is running it now. And they can't find a priest at the moment, but up until last year they had their own priest. So she draws on priests. I suppose if I hadn't come to Knock, I would love to be a pastor emeritus back again, sitting in an armchair. Well, I would go out a lot. I still meet them here and I love to meet them. It was a very gracious, precious time. It was my loveliest, just a very, very fond memories. Okay, I wouldn't want to be naive. I know the public perception. I know things that happen. But to be in a caravan up at Dublin Airport in a disused roundabout and seeing the traffic whirling around and you're in that inner circle, looking out at a different perspective, it was just a lovely, cosy feeling.
And subsequent to your time with the parish of the travelling community, you find yourself engaged in prison ministry, and in a particular way, in a very challenging type of prison ministry. Isn't that fair to say?
That's right, yeah. When the 6 years were, my provincial, somebody came to him one time and said, "We're worried about that man, he's getting worn out and you need to give him a rest." But the work we were in, my priest colleague said we were sprinting a marathon, we were trying to change things overnight, probably overworked, probably a bit burnt out as well, unfortunately. And but I was afraid to stop. But I was in touch with Father Niall O'Brien, a Columban who had been in the Philippines, and I read some of his books. He was in Maryknoll College. I went there. It was a very radical change from me being with the parish to being at a traveller's wedding on a Saturday, and I'm in a classroom in Maryknoll College on a Tuesday, and it's totally radical thinking. But it was the greatest grace time of my life. I found a great spiritual director. I went to work in Sing Sing prison, and it's a whole story that otherwise it was a choice. I was only thinking of it, recently during a retreat, that I had a choice of getting hospital care, immersing myself totally in the life of Jesus Christ, or going into Sing Sing prison. And I went in there, and the men gave me life and ministered to me.
Okay.
I remember the one particular time I went in and I said, I need help. And they were like, I suppose you use that word lepers, it's Hansen's disease today, but they were isolated, they were all dying of HIV AIDS, they'd been heroin users. And I said, I'd love a cup of coffee. And they said, and could I have something to eat? I was literally hungry. And they made me an omelette. And I can still feel myself tasting that omelette, and I call it Eucharist in the AIDS wing. And I love Herbert's poem, Love bade me welcome. You must sit down and eat. So I did sit and eat, and I looked back at it and said, why didn't you go to the Lord immediately? But this was immediate. So
That's
that
it.
was,
And of course, it's so gospel based, when you think of the ministry of Jesus sitting and eating with the tax collectors and the sinners and the prostitutes, the people that no one else would go to or dare to. Yeah. And you made an interesting comment there that I think is very important, that they ministered to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think so. I think, isn't it lovely when a person with additional needs puts their hand on your forehead and blesses you? And we know that, Brendan, you and I, unknown how many times we're blessed when somebody says to you, God bless you, Father Brendan. You know what that is. You hear echoes of it and you know who I'm talking about.
And I think that sort of brings us to the type of ministry that you're engaged in right now. I know that part of the charism of the Vincentian order is ministry to priests. And you have found yourself, after 50 years of ordination, here in the International Marian and Eucharistic Shrine of Knock, but with a particular vocation and mission towards priests, because when all of the people in our parishes think of their priest, their thought is very often of how the priest has ministered to them, present at their baptisms, their weddings, there when somebody they love dies, there in times of crisis and need. But we sometimes forget that priests are in need of ministry too. How did the ministry here that you're now engaged in to priests come about?
I gave parish missions for 7 years. And then I was leaving the parish in London. COVID had happened. I was in a parish as parish priest. I was in Maynooth for 7 years, working with seminarians, 2009 to 2016. Then I was in a parish in London. And then I was leaving that parish and coming back to Ireland. And I would put this in the context. Somebody asked one time, who's the poorest man Vincent de Paul ever met? And if you were to say to me, who's the poorest priest you ever met? I'd say myself. I'm very, very conscious of our vulnerability, no matter how competent a priest will appear in the public forum. So that would be one reason. I would feel a great rapport with my brother priests. And then it's the tradition I come from. Vincent de Paul said, work right out on the margins or work with brother priests. See, that great love for brother priests. I wanted to give something back. I wanted to give something back. Who am I to give anything back? And so for a year we discerned, myself, Father Aidan Galvin, who was given retreats in Killaloe Diocese, they know many of the priests there, and Father Sean Farr, who'd been spiritual director in Maynooth, and Sean became unwell during that year. But we did a year of discernment with Father Vincent Stapleton of Thurles, Leo Creelman up in Monaghan, Paul Glennon of the West, and Barry Horan, and Father Niall Ahern. These were, they guided and mentored us. We were to work in St. Peter's Fibsborough as our church in Dublin. I went to spiritual direction. In fact, I went to a counsellor, my supervisor, and she said, that was it. My supervisor, but it's a spiritual direction mode that she was in this thing. She said, why are you doing this in Dublin? And at the end of the session, I was coming to Knock. I came down here to see Father Richard Gibbons on the 4th of March 2022. Give him an A4 page with a few things written on it, maybe 3/4 of an A4 page. He stood up, shook my hand after 4 minutes, said, I've always wanted to start that here. I just said to my colleague, Father Aidan, I said, you know what, I'm so glad you agreed to come to Knock. This was the place to come to. And so for the last 3.5 years, priests come primarily for spiritual direction. We have also a place of a place they can come and be alone and find reintegration with themselves. And why are we doing, what are we finding? Priest ordained today has no peer group. There's a gap of 15 years from a previous ordination and nobody coming after him. So he's no peer group like years ago. He's isolated. He had been going into work with a parish priest. Now he's parish priest within 5 years of ordination. In my home place in Donegal, there were 4 priests for 4 churches. Now there's 1 priest for 4. I know one place where 1 priest is 6 churches. They are dealing with very, very difficult situations. We know that the public services of guards, ambulances have mandatory debriefing after trauma. Our men go back to an empty presbytery. We like to care for them when they come here.
We're meeting, Michael, today in the context that you're leading a group of priests and the bishop from the Killaloe diocese in the annual retreat. And that actually, those few days for any group of priests are very important to their spiritual well-being, but also to their physical and emotional well-being. Those few days, are vital, I think, are they, in the life of a priest.
Yeah, and this is not flattery. This is not an entree to be invited back again.
Oh, feel free.
But I've been telling everybody who asked me, I said, it's wonderful. I said, this is a graced retreat. And as I said, you're just as good as you're allowed to be, you're as good as you're invited to be. And whatever words we throw out, it is as if the people receiving them receive them, imbibe them, enrich them, and you get the atmosphere within the room. So we've given many retreats. We go to many priest assemblies. My colleague, Father Aidan, say what we're doing here is inflated greatly. We are the age we are, but we're doing something. I'd always had a little motto, do one thing, do something. So we're doing one thing, we're doing something. Ask your listeners to please pray that we will have people, you talked about continuity, sustainability. We can leave this to God's providence, but we must do a little planning as well and do a little begging around here and there. Who will follow us in this work? I sort of feel in my bones it will continue. If Aidan and I should disappear overnight, people say, are you retired? I said, I'm only starting. You can guess my age if I was a late vocation as a teacher and over 52 years ordained.
In fact, the overarching theme of these days has been the priest as a man of God for others.
Yeah.
And just even reflecting on the title of your recent publication that marked your Golden Jubilee, the whole idea of respect. I think that has been an incredible theme over these few days, particularly given the etymology and the origin of the word in relation to self, to God, and to others. And that idea seems to be kind of filter through all of your work and your mission and your ministry.
Yeah, and it's strange. It was a little memory just buried in my subconscious. I don't know. It came back to me in my 40s. I was going along one day with my father, and I saw a man stumbling. I said to my father, from my 8-year-old lips, I said, that man is drunk. And my father's a pioneer. My father said, he never said many words, but he said this. He said, Michael, don't say he's drunk. Say he's not well today. And I thought back in that was respect. And as you said, respectere, to take a second look. It's like spectacles, it's like perspective, all these different languages, all this family of words. There's always a reason. If you work with men in prison, you just meet them as they are. You're not meeting criminals, you're meeting men, as I did, meeting men facing death. If you meet people in the confessional, you're meeting people. And even on that, we always call that confessio laudis. I celebrate the fact that they're there. I don't know, I think respecting God, taking a second look at God, who's the God of my life, a magnanimous, a God that gives us scope to go astray, non-judgmental. No, that's the honours course. I mean, we make mistakes, but we're trying to grow all the time. Maybe one of the things that's emerging in this retreat too, taking a second look at those who find it no longer desirable to go to church, or who feel alienated, or feel disappointed, or feel hurt. We embrace them as well. They're God's children as well. I suppose the whole thing, we're learning all the time, weren't we? I think even in our upbringing, chastisement was a big thing, you know, and parents would have been afraid to give us scope to go astray. What would happen to us? You know, you're afraid. And maybe we people as priests and all that were afraid we'd lose them, you know, if there weren't strict laws, you know, but now,
And
yeah,
I suppose,
I'm struggling on that one,
I
Brendan.
suppose in the context of the times we're living in, even the geopolitical stuff that's going on around us, there's a huge amount of rush to judgment. There's an incredible lack of fellow feeling for our human beings. You know, this way we're always encouraged to see everyone in the image and the likeness of God. And possibly we're encouraged to see the image and the likeness of God in the least lovable and the least respectable in the society in which we find ourselves. And that, when we begin to do that, it can be transformative, not only to others, but to ourselves as well. And particularly in priestly ministry, I think.
Yeah, to see the good, in others, you know. Yeah, there was that horrific thing happened in Bondi Beach in Sydney. The man who did the shooting, I wonder what was he like at 7. A perspective that I have in life for respect is this. I think there are 2 places of equality in life: the maternity ward and the mortuary chapel. What happens in between determines a lot. I've met travelling mothers with mothers from aristocratic or well-to-do backgrounds, but a mother is a mother is a mother, and a baby's a baby, and there's that beautiful equality. And then you go to the mortuary chapel. So when terrible deeds are done, when the oppressors hurt the oppressed or break them down, I mean, they all, you know, as I say.
And even you spoke about that idea of captivity at one point during our sessions together this past week. And I was very struck by that captivity isn't just a physical incarceration, that we can be imprisoned in our own selves, our own pasts, our own frailties, our own weaknesses. And really what the gospel is about the freedom to be the children of God.
Yeah, I suppose addiction is a captivity.
Yes.
Prejudice is a captivity. Fear is a captivity. Fear of the unknown, fear of the stranger, fear of poverty.
Okay.
Captivity of being misunderstood. And yet I made reference to Brian Keenan's book, An Evil Cradling, became a joyful rebirthing for him, you know.
Okay. Father Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here this evening on Clare FM. And we're not good at looking always to the future. And do you see this ministry that you have, 2 priests and 2 people active in ministry, how do you see that growing and continuing into the future here and now?
I would see it growing in, and I will see it will be continued by lay people. There's so many being trained here in spiritual direction in Knock. I myself go to 2 women, and I've gone all my life to women spiritual directors. I think we celibate men, our hearts need to be touched and understood by the warmth of a woman who can have another perspective on us male celibates or whatever. So I would say for the future, certainly that I would have said during the retreat, there's a mutuality. There's a mutual. This will be continued by lay people, and I think you started this little talk here together between us, saying, I said we came from the people, we're sustained by the people. I think this will be sustained into the future. As you said, please God, the people will come to realize more and more the needs of the priest.
And that's probably an appropriate thought on which to finish our little chat this evening, Michael, because we are celebrating the feast of our national patron, St. Brigid of Kildare, which I always think in the Irish ecclesiastical tradition represents that feminine dimension of the divine. And again, that generative and rebirthing, as you say, I think it has a lot to offer us. On behalf of all our listeners and all the team here at Beyond Belief, can I continue to pray and wish you every blessing in your ministry, and thank you for your time with us this evening.
Míle buíochas agus lá éilbríde sonna díobh.
Míle buíochas goite freisin.
Nishtayich den hari beladul konshin Isterish na fail bridge do me mushole Go kilche mark rocket ni stefa meki he Go shasi meshi osilar hunde mayo Fogem le hokte go nerin makri Shamaro hilin ang gwino mar skapin ang kyo Nuar smoy ni mercaro no galyang tiv his der sky o convile no flow ni mayo Kilay don ang balya o fos ang goch nion Taos mera isu krivon is mes de gochsar Is do mensha mushasa vigart larmujinie Dimanish Giam is venorisho Nishtayich den hari belodul kunshin Istesh na fail bridge do me mushole Go kilche mark rocket ni stafa meki he Go shasi meshi osilar kunde mayo Fogim le hukte go nerin mukri Shamara hirin ang gino mar skapin ang kyo Nur smoy ni mercaro no gayang tiv his der sky a convile no falni mayo Kilay don ang balya o fos ang goch nion Taos mera isu krivon is mes de gochsar Is do mensha mushasa vigart larmujinie Dimanish Giam is vonish
music there from an album entitled Filla Wio, and that piece of music is one that you may be familiar with. It's from the poem by Antina O'Raftery, Killaloe, and it has those immortal lines that we hear so often this time of the year. Anish Chachtan Erig, Begon Loig, Dul Conchina, Agus Treshna Fele Brigid, or Doig Me Mohiol. Well, Noia Corja, Tasha Ig Dridjum got Tapig Idro Jehiclog, Agus Tasha in Amgumsa, Mohiol or Du, Agus Gul Awalya. Can I take the opportunity to say a sincere word of thanks to the guests on the programme, to Father Tom Hogan from Burr in County Offaly, for reflecting with us on the spirituality, the life and the significance of St. Brigid. Father Michael McCullagh, Vincentian priest based in the International Marian and Eucharistic Shrine at Knock, working persistently and tirelessly to support the life, the mission, the ministry and the spirituality of priests the length and breadth of Ireland. I'm deeply grateful for them taking the time to be with us this evening. As the Feast of St. Brigid draws to a close, we're at the beginning of a very rich time liturgically in the church. Tomorrow, the 2nd of February, we celebrate the Feast of the Presentation of the Lord, and at all our Masses we will bless the candles that will be used in our homes and our churches throughout the coming year. And that is a truly beautiful tradition of the Blessed Candle. Which of us hasn't been consoled at a time of exam or test to know that Mammy is at home lighting the blessed candle to keep us company on our ordeal? Or indeed, when someone is sick, the blessed candle reminds us of our connection and our warmth with and for them. And then on the 3rd of February, of course, we celebrate the Feast of St. Blaise, and we traditionally bless the throats on that day. Through the intercession of St. Blaise, Bishop and Martyr, may God deliver you from all ailments of the throat and from every other evil. And indeed, may you be watched over and protected from every evil. Don't forget that we're with you every Sunday morning at 7:15 here on Clare FM with Sunday Prayer, and on Sunday nights after the 9 o'clock news with the weekly edition of Beyond Belief. Gur míle maithagh go léir as bhór golúdar, tá súlaim gur bhain sibh tanmh agus sult as clár na híthe nocht, agus go dtí go mimid le chéile an céadú eile ríist, go dé sibh go léir sláán, ihuá agus beannach dé oribh ar fad.